Ed was always, like ever since, I've known Ed since I was in grade 5 and he was in grade 4. We went to the same school, the Scarborough Gifted Program, and Ed was always with his guitar. Everybody kind of knew that he was the kid who played guitar and sang. I mean,
and the kid who showed it off whenever he could.
Yeah, you know, but he was, his tastes, to my knowledge, always ran in kind of a different course than mine. Things like Rush and Max Webster and stuff that I really didn't know a lot about and wasn't really keyed into it all. But then I remember in high school, first of all, I remember going to a Peter Gabriel concert and seeing him there and going, oh wow, he likes Peter Gabriel too, and so do I. I realized that there was more to it than that. And then I think when I was in my last year of high school, he was in a Battle of the Bands, and I was one of the judges. And I couldn't believe the range of music that they played, everything from Max Webster to Peter Gabriel with Talking Heads and whatever else in there. And I was kind of like, wow, this is cool. And he can play all this stuff, and he's actually kind of attempting to do it all. So then we ended up at the same...
So you couldn't believe how amazingly I sung all that stuff?
No, I said that you attempted. That was me and my best friend from school, Jeff Poundset. We'd been best friends since we were about 8, and we used to write stories together and just all kinds of draw cartoons. From grade 4 onwards, it would be drawing comic strips and whatever else. And so it just kind of extended itself into music as we started to learn how to play some instruments. So my parents would go away for a weekend, and where other kids would have parties, and then buy cases of Brador.
Higher alcohol content.
Right. We would rent a 4-track cassette recorder and a few bottles of Newcastle Brown Ale and get some Kentucky Fried Chicken. And we'd make up songs and record them and laugh our heads off. And so at things like at school assemblies or at music camp or whatever, we'd get up and play a couple songs, and we'd think they were great, and everybody else would kind of say, I couldn't really hear what they were saying. But Ed had a copy of the tape. So one time at music camp, he's walking around with his guitar, and he comes up and he's singing one of the songs that Jeff and I had written. So of course I'm insanely flattered. But we just kind of started hanging out and started singing together. And the greatest revelation for me at that point was the ease of singing harmony with Ed. It's something I had never really come across before, where we could actually just pick a part and sing it in whatever song. Songs that didn't necessarily have built-in 2-part harmonies, that we would just throw them in, and it felt so natural that I was kind of like, wow, I could do this and it'd be totally different.
That's when we realized that we were twins.
Mm-hmm. Separated at birth. Fraternal twins.
Now, what was your take at the time on him?
Well, I mean, I'd spent so much time in this high school cover band. And, well, it was called about 5 different things, depending on whatever we thought was cool at the moment. In its last incarnation, it was called 3 Guys from Barrie, although there were 5 of us in the band and no one was from Barrie. We had concocted this whole mythology that actually nobody was from Barrie, that it was a place that people moved to, but that no one was actually from there, so that 3 people from Barrie would be some sort of magical convergence. Thought it was quite funny.
Teenagers are funny.
So, but it was a cover band, and we worked really hard to get things to sound just like they did on the record. Nerve-wrackingly hard, you know. And when I first heard this tape, Scary Movie Breakfast, that Steve had done with Jeff was in my science class at the time, and Jeff gave me this tape. It was so refreshing to just hear something that was so crappy / amazing. Like, it was funny, and it was inspired, and it was hack, and it was fun, though, and it made me laugh, and it just had a great energy to it. And I thought, wow, like, I spend all my time trying to get things to sound like other people, and these guys have just got this cool original thing going, and I was really impressed by that, and it kind of put a new spin on what I wanted to do with my music, and ended up being making friends with Steve at this summer camp, and we just kind of clicked musically.
I think I went to the music camp ever since I was in grade 6. right up to grade 13. And Steve was also been a long time music camp attender, so I always saw him from afar, you know, and saw him and his friends do different things at the lip sync concerts and things like that. I remember they did these boots were made for walking, and they had like 50 pairs of rubber boots on stage, and like we're just like chucking them at the audience, you know. So I thought I liked that. There was something there. And meanwhile, I was doing like Huey Lewis in the News, you know, I don't know, all the birds have been blue, they don't know what to do, you know, being very college, you know. And so that's how I knew Steve. And Ed actually went to music camp a year that I didn't go, but Ed met Andy that year. And
I remember Andy saying, "You got to meet my brother Jim," because I was in the percussion ensemble with Andy. I always did percussion in the school band systems because I was really horrible theorist and couldn't really sight read music. So I could usually fake my way by in the percussion section until I actually learned the parts. So I always did percussion. Met Andy, and we had a lot of similar tastes in music, and told him that I played in this band, and he said he had a band with his brother Jim, and I just remember him saying, you really got to meet my brother Jim. And so I ended up playing guitar in their band at the time, the Backstreet Basement Boogie Blues Band.
yeah, we were so excited to have somebody know how to play distortion, because we'd had a classical guitar player before, and he was, you know, learning how to do that, you know.
You should have seen this band, man. It was like,
Did you saw them?
I just saw
videotapes.
videotapes later, and I couldn't believe it. It's like a full-fledged R&B band with a horn section. It was like they were you know, if there was a teenage talk show, they would have been the band. They're all excellent players, and
I was blown away when I first saw them. Like, I was in this
Freaky.
cover band that I told you about, and we were doing, like, you know, a lot of rock stuff and a lot of stuff that was pretty easy to pull off for a small combo. And we were a good band, though. You know, we worked hard. We rehearsed weekly. We'd see these guys, and it was like, oh my God, I never would have attempted a Steve Winwood song with my band, because we just, you know, no horns, and no one would have bothered to kind of get it together. But
Or Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes by Paul Simon.
yeah,
It's
like
only
they,
because it had a good bass parts. I had my way.
Yeah, they had a good bass player.
Good bass player.
yeah.
so it just songs with really difficult arrangements and things, and I was really impressed, and all of a sudden I was in the band.
Yeah, my parents were concerned because I was in university. I was, you know, kind of, I guess it was my second year or third year even, third year of university. And Ed was just starting, and they're like, well, what are you doing? You know, but at the same time, my parents were always really open to stuff and really supportive. So they kind of sat us down with our then manager, John King, and said, you know, we need some guarantees here. And he said, well, there are no guarantees. It's showbiz. It's like, can't give you guarantees or anything. And I think they kind of understood that, but they also understood how much we wanted to do it and how much we understood, how much of a sacrifice they understood that we knew we were doing. They're kind of like, well, so just go and do it. You know, we were just kind of silly kids. We weren't dangerous kids, and I think they knew that, so. Well, the first tape we ever made was we called Buck Naked, which was a collection of what we had recorded on 4-track between myself and Ed. And it kind of grew. There was a few different editions of it, because the first one probably had 10 songs.
The more we recorded, we just
added it
tacked
to
on
the album.
end.
And I think we probably sold, I don't know, a couple hundred of those over a course of period of time, just selling them off the stage at shows and so on. The next one we did, which we called Barenaked Lunch, was me and Ed and Jim and Andy. We recorded in my parents' basement on a 4-track and sold that one. And that one actually sold, I think, like a couple thousand or something. It sold a lot. And there was something weird in the reproduction of that, where it all ended up sounding a little bit fast. It was about a semitone fast,
Right.
everything. So it had a bit of a chipmunky kind of thing going on. The one that kind of we got some renown for, which became known as the Yellow Tape, was 5 songs that we recorded. We went into Wellesley Sound and recorded 5 songs, essentially for a demo, because we were going down to South by Southwest, which is a music conference in Austin, Texas, and our manager said, you need something that sounds more like you guys. That tape doesn't sound like what you sound like now, because at that point we now had Tyler in the group, and we just had gotten better and fuller sounding and so on. And so we went in and did this and didn't even really mix most of the songs, I think. We had been booked to play Toronto City Hall for their big New Year's show City TV would put on. And, you know, we thought it was going to be a good gig because it'd be on TV. And we were at that point kind of at the height of the Canadian, or the Toronto club scene at least, and had just done our first Canadian tour, which was as a proper band, which was really, it was a great feeling for us, like going through and playing sold out big clubs across the country. And one of our goals early on was not to be just a Toronto club band, that we wanted to be able to reach all of Canada. And by doing things like being on Morningside with Peter Zosky, we'd go out on the road and be people showing up at the gig in Victoria because they'd heard us on the radio. And we realized that was kind of the magic of being a Canadian artist. So meanwhile, we'd been so wrapped up in all of that, we didn't even think about this City Hall gig that much. But somewhere along the line, they said, well, they don't want you there because they don't like the name of the band. And fine, we booked another gig. We played at McMaster University in Hamilton. That was that. But I think the week after New Year's, somebody at the Toronto Star, Peter Howell, had read about it in an article that Jim Slotek and The Sun had written, just kind of making fun of the PC nature of the City Hall decision, which we hadn't really even given a second thought to. But we got a call, go down to City Hall to the Henry Moore, and they want to take a picture there. Fine. Well, the next day it ends up on the front cover of the Toronto Star, and the phone starts ringing off the hook at the Cregan household, the only one that's actually in the phone book.
Yeah. So like the CBC crews were coming to my parents' house, you know, they're asking us questions. We were just sort of calling the other guys going, we got crews over at it, what's going on? What's a CBC doing at my house?
All of a sudden, we became the eye of the storm for the debate on political correctness, which was a debate that we didn't want to be on the other side of, because I think all of us agreed with a large portion of what was, obviously it can go too far, but I believe in not inadvertently offending people by using words that are offensive to them. You know, I dropped faggot from my vocabulary, which was a common word when I was a little kid. It just meant you're a jerk. But, you know, the political correctness of that word, I learned was not cool. You know, and that was the part of political correctness that we all supported, was just not using words that were inadvertently offensive to people.
So at what point did you bring it back in, Ed?
We're essentially kind of left-leaning,
well-educated
young men. I mean, exactly. We had no intention of being the Andrew Dice Clays of Canada, whatever, trying to initiate some kind of backlash against political correctness. In retrospect, now we realized what a huge thing that was for us, because this was right at the time that we'd had this yellow tape that we'd made, which we'd never really intended for sale. We just meant it as a demo. But right around this time, we'd been starting to play bigger and bigger shows at home and getting calls from retailers on Yonge Street saying, can we get some copies of your tape? We got people asking for it. And we're like, sure, fine. And then they'd sell out and they'd ask for more. This City Hall thing happens, and we sold like 18,000 copies of this tape in 1 month, which was pretty insane. We certainly weren't prepared for that.
All from the publicity of this being banned to play this gig.
It was at the same time we'd had our first video made. We'd made a video for the Bruce Cockburn cover song, Lovers in a Dangerous Time, which was on a tribute album. So it was all just kind of a happy accident. This all happened at once. But when Peter Mansbridge is talking about us on the National, there's a little clip of our video behind us. And then Ordinary Canadians said, I've heard this whole kerfuffle, let me see what they actually sound like. And kind of made the leap to come and see us or read about us or check out our tape or whatever else. And it just took us to another level, which at the time we were really embarrassed that our name or that some news story would take us there and not our music.
I remember going on, talking on a television show and saying, you know, our point was, well, this is a municipal government that has recently cut funding to women's shelters in Toronto. And now they're worried about us being sexist. Like, our angle was always like, we never saw it as this blatant publicity stunt. And everyone was always trying to say that. Everyone was always trying to say, you know.
Is it free beer and chicken wings? Is that what your name means? You know, and it was the last thing on our minds. When Steve and I named the band, we had no intention of being a band. It wasn't a moniker to fool people and draw people in. It was just something that made us smile.
We never thought there'd be an audience to try and attract. And we always got offended when people would say, well, you know, you got to hand it to June Rowlands for helping your career out, because we didn't want to hand it to that. We wanted to hand it to our music and our fans and so on, which to a large degree was our success and is our success here in the United States and wherever else too. I had the idea for the song, and I kind of imagined it being kind of an indie rock version of Ticket to Ride. But you know, we kind of played it. And it was fine. It wasn't a great standout track of the four that we were about to do. But we had just done the really up-tempo rocking one, Wizard of Magic Land, and we decided that we'd had enough rock for the day. And
Plus, we were done for the day.
Yeah.
Like we were
just setting up the place to get sounds for the next day, or maybe do a bit of arrangement.
Yeah, we thought before we leave, even though it was past midnight, we thought we're not going to start another track, but we'll maybe try to get sounds and get set up so that we can come in the morning and just start trying to run it and get arrangement ideas. And I think just because we were tired, Jim was working out the chords and Kev was, so I sat behind the drums just for goofing around and did a funk beat kind of as a joke, like a half-tempo funk beat behind what was going to be this, as Steve said, like an indie rock kind of rock, you know, high energy thing. And we all went, I know it was a joke, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so immediately Ty got behind the drums. I went over to guitar and started experimenting with some stuff. And 3 hours later, I think we had 4 or 5 beds of it down.
That's the kind of thing that won't happen if you're not in a band. You know, if you're when there's 5 guys and everybody has different ideas and we trust each other enough as players to just play off of each other's ideas. Well, it's what we do on stage all the time, especially in between the real songs. Those are the little moments of extra inspiration.
My favorite moment was by the end of the last take, Ed was in front of the drums playing guitar, lying on the couch. It was about 2 a.m. He was lying on the couch, almost asleep, playing the thing. You know, Steve was singing in a voice I've only heard after we've had about 19 gin and tonics at 3 a.m. We're trying to talk about, you know, problems in the world, and you know, Ty, you know, it's like, I'm always talking like that. Each gin and tonic makes my voice go higher. But you know, like it was a real moment, like a conditions moment. We tend to be very efficient. Whether it's like we won't practice until 4 days before a tour, and we just do it, you know, because we want to spend time with our families or whatever. You know, we'll get things done quickly, and even in recording sessions, on the Maroon sessions, you know, we banged out 2 or 3 bed tracks a day. Worked really quickly, and we have a real work ethic once we eventually get down to it. So this case was like we were all burnt, and just the physical condition of, you know, rocking out on a track all day and the lateness of the hour, and it produced something extraordinary, I think.
If I could just add too, I think we all have such different influences that we all kind of hear and perceive these demos differently. And I think we're flexible enough as a band to be open to the colors that each member hears. And so the song becomes flexible and it can end up in these unpredictable places.
I think it's taken its toll on each of us in different ways and in different waves, kind of.
I've got
It's-
this nasty rash on my ankle.
We call that the celebrity.
Hearn's Nasty Rash, page 7.
I think recognition, it's so funny because Canada, man, it's really hard to be a celebrity in Canada. And that is not a complaint, by the way.
But we don't like celebrities. The common thing, we always joke about this now, but the common thing, especially in the Gordon years, was, hey, stay Canadian, which I think we're supposed to take as don't become a celebrity, don't become the reason people liked us was that they felt we were normal Canadian guys and that they would hate to see us go Hollywood. But at the same time, since we have gone Hollywood, people are being pretty proud of us and pretty nice about the whole thing. People are congratulatory and so on at home, and people like my new fake breasts and so on, which is great.
They're great, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's funny because I never see, the only thing,
You told me they were real.
the only detrimental effect is privacy, obviously. Whether that's what you want to walk down the street with your daughter and, focus your attention on her and getting her to, pick out her new suitcase or whatever, and somebody's like, hey man, love you guys are great, hey buddy, whatever, and it's like, oh, thank you, I appreciate that, but I'm trying to do this. We don't get that to anywhere near the degree as, real celebrities do. We get a little bit bothered, but most people actually are quite polite and nice, in Canada anyway.
Well, except when I went out for lunch with Steve on the Danforth, there people kept up, they kept knowing who you were.
Yeah, but nobody bugged me though, and that's and that's what's cool. I love living in the city because first of all, in my community, everybody knows that I live in that neighborhood, and it's cool. I mean, there's other kind of celebs who live there too. On top of that, in Toronto, people are so jaded that they're like, I just saw Harrison Ford last week. Who cares about Barenaked Ladies guy? Which is my official name in Canada, by the way, Barenaked Ladies guy.
Or Gordon.
Yeah, I used to get Gordon a lot. Hey, Gordon. But usually it's, hey, Barenaked Ladies guy.
I love that I can get see a NHL hockey game in any city in the NHL at a moment's notice, except for Toronto. I have to pull some special strings to get, and that's one of the perks of celebrity, obviously, is access to things like, suddenly you get free records. Well, where were the free records when I needed them 12, 15 years ago? And, all this free kind of stuff, which is great, but it's also kind of like the guilt, the built-in Canadian guilt was hard to shake for a while. And it's almost like you prevent yourself from, fully exploring an upper lifestyle. It's like the middle class is so firmly entrenched. Like none of us really went nuts and bought a Porsche or,
Well, Mike Reno did.
Mike Reno did, yeah.
But he's not in the band anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Or a villa in Tuscany or something, Well, partly because we just started making money recently. There's a little tidbit for you. But also because we have these pretty modest tastes, and we come from middle class suburban backgrounds.
No,
So
I have a taste for a lot of the high-end stuff. I just don't believe I deserve it.
yeah.
That's the other.
Oh, exactly. So I love living in Toronto. It's a great place to live, and I'm not too bothered. Don't come knocking on my door though.
That's the one. It is the risk you take. You either go, I'm going to go and live behind gates somewhere, or I'm going to be right on the street and say, here I am, I'm part of the community. And so far, I've had pretty good luck being part of the community. Occasionally, you get kids figuring out where you live, and I think that's always a struggle for me, is realizing, this is where I live, and I'm not the guy from Barenaked Ladies here. I'm dad to 3 kids and husband to somebody, and a part of the community as a parent and a taxpayer or whatever else you want to say. And I think most people get pretty embarrassed when they come up to the door and realize, oh, I just interrupted somebody's dinner or whatever else, or I just invaded their space. But it is difficult for me riding that. I think, well, here I am with my kids. I don't mind walking around the street with my kids, but I'd rather my kids not be on TV or in a movie or whatever else. And although they are there, it's like I want to be able to protect them at the same time without being a maniac about it.
I know that I probably would have gone to Neil Peart's front door myself and knocked on the door and gone, hey, you're Neil Peart, right on. Cool, I like your drum parts. Okay, see ya. Like, I would have done that. So I don't blame kids or whatever, or adults for that matter, but once, like I say, most people are really polite. If you explain to them, hey, look, I'm trying to make dinner or something, they're like, oh, suddenly the facade goes away. So that is a benefit to living in Canada. The star system isn't crazy, you know, you live there.